how can you have this conversation about prostate and prostate health and challenges when you are a person who is known to be, as you said, a health guru?
I completely neglected myself. All my habits turned into bad food, decisions making, and all the things that I tell people not to do, I was doing to myself.
Welcome to Profound Conversations, a dynamic broadcast platform focused on building healthy communities.
This is Profound Conversations, and I am Dr. Mawata Sankara. And we're here today with Coach Darelle Joiner to talk about something that is essential, that is significant to men's health. This is Profound Conversation, not the idea of profundity in conversation, because it becomes, because we talk about things that are important to us. Welcome to Profound Conversations, Coach Joiner. Your book, you put it out here. It is the Prostate Playbook. Of all the questions, of all the particular issues that you've had to answer in your life, I want you to answer this question right here. Why did you call this book the Prostate Playbook?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Dr. Sankara. The title of the book came pretty early in me wanting to write it. And the reason I came up with that title is because I wanted to grab men's attention. And I knew something that most men connect with is something that's related to sports. Even the design of it showing like a playbook, an actual play. And so I just thought that would actually get people's attention, men specifically attention. And I wanted to put the sports, approach on it because I think most guys can, appreciate that. And then also being transparent about who I am and my background and all those things. I just thought it was a good touch with it. And, it wasn't nothing that I planned to do, certainly, to be honest with you. I started writing this book as I was going through. And it started with documenting what I was going through. And it turned into a book because I said, this is something that I have to absolutely share 1,000%.
That's where the value in life comes from, is where we share experiences with one another. And then in that sharing is where we should get some level of enlightenment, understanding, and uplift. And so I thank you for sharing this particular narrative. Now, the question here is about this idea of, you said, what I do, right? What do you do, right? This is Playbook. What do you do?
Yeah, so thank you so much for asking. I do two things. And I like to say one is my calling and the other is a career. And so my calling for most of my life, for more than 30 years now, I've been a fitness professional, personal trainer, instructor, nutritionist, everything in wellness, coaching, life coaching, et cetera. And I love that. And I feel like it's a natural calling for me. And I do very well with people, inspiring people. But my career at the same time, I've been in law enforcement from the military since 1998 as well. So I've done that as my side gig, I like to call it, on the federal side, and wrapping up with that. And I'm just looking forward to just being 100% back into the actual calling. So I do both of those things at the same time.
Wow. So being in law enforcement is a high stress job.
Absolutely. And I've moved around from multiple agencies. Right now, I'm not going to say I'm in a very stressful position. I'm a manager. I work with Department of Treasury. But prior to that, I jumped around. I've worked with the Federal Air Marshal Service right after 9/11. I was one of those guys to put my hand up and say, hey, I want to go out here and serve the country and help, protect, detect, deter, and defeat, as we say. And I did that for quite a while. And that was very challenging and also very stressful, being on airplanes every day. I'm not necessarily worried about terrorists, but just worried about the mechanical failure of an airplane. So that was stressful in itself.
Right. So this speaks volumes to what you do. And also you are coach now. How can you have this conversation about prostate and prostate health and challenges when you are a person who is known to be, as you said, a health guru, or some would say a health nut? And I ask the question all the time, if thinking about what you put into your body and how you live your life is a nut, then what do you call somebody that does anything to their body, right? So anyway, I just want to ask this question about, how was this that you're having this conversation about prostate and prostate health when you're a person that promotes optimal health and optimal living?
That's a great question, and I actually find great ease in answering that because I tell people all the time, a coach need a coach. Number one, and I also say that my gift, my calling is not for me. I truly believe the gift that we have is designed to be given away, and so I like to use the analogy of most chefs who can cook these fancy gourmet meals for everybody else. They go home and eat hot dogs, and so I wasn't doing a good job on myself, and more specifically to kind of like put the time frame on it. I think I was just coming out of my divorce and was going through some things with my kids being alienated. And so the stress of trying to run a small business, going back and forth with court, learning how to live by myself for the first time because I had been with my former wife, ex-wife, since I was 21, learning how to navigate life and still try to be a dad, be a coach, and all those things. I completely neglected myself. All my habits turned into bad food, decisions making, and all the things that I tell people not to do, I was doing to myself, which is usually four things. I say you got to keep the core four. You got to eat right, sleep tight, stress less, move more. I wasn't doing any of those things. I was just showing up for everybody else, but wasn't showing up for myself.
Now say those four again so we can get those. That's critical. Say the what?
Absolutely. I call it the core four. And I'll even break it down a little further. You have to eat right. That's finding nutritious food. You got to learn about it. That's number one. Number two, you have to sleep tight, making sure you get proper sleep and rest. As we age, we need even more of that. Number three is you have to stress less, right? And stressing less because we know stress will bring on all types of enzymes to the body and it will create things that will eat away at the muscle. And last but not least, which I think is the most important, which is you have to move more. I find that to be the common denominator because if you exercise, it makes you hungry. Make good decisions. If you exercise, it makes you sleepy. Take your behind the bed. And if you exercise, it's a natural way to remedy stress.
Got it. So eat right, sleep tight, stress less, move more.
Yes, sir.
I got it. I like that in, right? And so you saying that you are violating your four pillars or
Absolutely.
and that's not an uncommon thing to happen, right? So for the person who engages in activity to often neglect activity because one is so busy doing the work and taking care of things that they fail to take care of themselves. But we do know that if we ride on an airplane, it says that if the cabin should lose pressure, put the mask on your face first before to assist others, or else you'll suffocate and everybody will suffer in the entire process. So it is important to think about how do we actually take care of ourselves. And you mentioned certain things, and you kind of moved past this particular point with some level of deliberate intention. But I'm going to pull you back, right? Because you mentioned your occupation, you mentioned your other things, but you also said that your personal life had a hiccup, and the hiccup was, of course, this idea of divorce or separation. And you said the alienation of your children. You were putting that in the conversation, which means then that what was essential to your existence as a man was disrupted, which also would be a contributing factor to the dynamics of your stress, health, and well-being.
And to be honest with you, I call that double rejection. And the part, especially with the kids and going through the divorce, but more so the kids, because the part that I didn't mention is I also was a ward of the state. I was a foster care kid. I was in group homes. I didn't grow up like regular kids. I struggled in school. I had a lot of things happen to me. And so actually, I felt like I was experiencing PTSD in my 20s and 30s, dealing with the childhood stuff that I ran from, got away from, and didn't know how to talk about until later in my 40s. And so that happened. And when that happened to me with the kids and the divorce and the kids not wanting to be around me because of whatever they were going through, it just really disrupted my entire flow because I thought everything I had was built on a solid institution with one person. And when that thing broke apart, I just completely lost everything.
And this is one of the things that we're talking about, Brother Joiner, with men right now around the country, around this space. When we talk about the dynamics of health and well-being, talk about Black men mental health forum. So we're going to have to do more of this discussion process to be able to unpack certain things. And I know that this is not where we're supposed to go today. We thought about going today, but I actually want us to be able to catch this critical point. And it's critical. This critical statement is this. Is that it's very clear that you had an intention about what family life would look like. And that disruption is the thing that is problematic. And it's on the foundation of, you said, being a ward of the state, the foster care system, so that you realize that there's something that you did and did not want, and now you are having to experience that. And so we want to be clear about this process of family is that every last one of us have challenges that we go through. Every last one of us has things to go. No matter what we're talking about, no matter what we're doing, whether we are the coach, the health guru, the law enforcer, the preacher, the teacher, the psychologist, the psychiatrist, everybody's having a challenge to go through, and it's important to stop. And this moment right here, just now, you have no idea of how it did two things, right? It affirmed something even within my own life and life experiences, and I'm sure secondarily it confirmed some other things and thoughts and ideas in the lives of others. Go ahead.
Yeah, and Doc, and I was actually just going to say, and there is another movement that I have started, and I know we'll segue into that in a later time if you like, particularly into what you're talking about. And I started a movement that I'm launching now. It's called Mad Dad, MADDAD, Mad Dad, because I was a mad dad, right? I was a mad dad about what I was going through. I was a mad dad about, most importantly, what I didn't do, how I didn't show up for myself at court, how I trusted the system and all those things, and it backfired on me, so to speak. But through that process and through my growth and me going into church and going into, biblical studies and learning different things about myself that I had to grow in areas, I changed that mad dad into a movement that actually stands for making a difference day after day. Do it anyway, right? And that is my call to men, to really educate men that have this anger, that have this madness about what they're going through, especially when you're going through a separation, whether it's the baby, the mother of your child, your ex-wife, or whatever it is. It's tough. It's very hard. And unfortunately, most systems tend to lean favorably toward the mom than the men. And so I definitely have a voice for those gentlemen, and I want to most importantly just teach them how to get better as men, because that's one thing that most of us, I can speak for myself, I wasn't taught how to be a man. And then I was given this challenge of being a father and a husband. And I still didn't know how to be a man. So I had to go back to the foundation and grow in some areas, spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, relationally, all those things. But I had to first admit that I was lacking in those areas.
Right. So that's a powerful piece, Mad Dad. I've been using this acronym for a long time. MAD means make a difference. And you said making a difference day after day, which is powerful, right? And so I like the mantra, and have a back part to that. It's just critical to be able to share the stories. And I think this is what we need to do. More to be able to share our narratives, not for the sake of commiserating, but as we share the narratives, that is a part of our manhood. It's often this conversation about people say that I didn't know how to be. I don't think anybody knows how to be anything until you actually in the game of life, or whatever it is. And people say no one ever showed me. Well, people have to show you what they have, and I think that there's some things that we actually do that we know innately how to become. Because ask the question: if nobody was around, would we be able to have children? So there will be somehow people learn animals know how to do certain things because they know how to do things. And I think that if we allow ourselves to be able to get into that zone, that space, and be that, then we actually can become that in a certain way that is helpful for the sustenance of life. Now, here we are. We're in this situation, we're talking about prostate health. And this is going to tie together real neatly, family. That those seem to be somewhere off of the rail, the rail. But I think that we're actually in the groove. You had an experience. You're exercising. You're moving through life. You go to the gym. You have the urgency to release urine. You go, and as thinking everything is all cool, you're going to be able to go have this release, and nothing happens the way you thought it was going to happen. You say a few days before that, you had taken some cold medication, so you knew that your life was changing. However, here's the story that you recognize that something is amiss. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. And so there was tons of signs, I would say that first, that I totally ignored, that I didn't learn until after the process. And I'm talking about signs of constipation, signs of slow urination, signs of not even full erections and having sex. And so all those signs were there, but I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't doing anything about it. So I want to say that for the record. But yes, to your point, I was preparing for this past inauguration in 2025, and I had a slight cold. And I said, I want to get ahead of it. I want to take some medicine and dry myself up, which is what I normally do. And actually what happened is what normally happened. I didn't know that medication can actually dry you up and make it difficult to urinate. But this time it didn't just make it difficult, it shut it down completely. And so I found myself having the urge, because I drink a lot of water, and I couldn't release myself. And I ran home and I shared it with my wife, and she said, well, just calm down, maybe go in the basement, maybe you need to just try to sit down and relax. And I tried that for a few hours, not minutes. Nothing was happening. And tried coffee, I added more to my bladder. I tried tea, everything that normally would make me relieve myself wasn't happening. And so unbeknownst to me, because of fear, embarrassment, I told my wife to go to bed, and I literally sat on the toilet from 7 p.m. until 9 a.m. the next morning when she came and still found me. And I couldn't get a doctor appointment because I was afraid to go to the hospital until 3 p.m. And I waited until I talked to a doctor on the phone who said, you need to get to the hospital right now before your bladder explodes, because I was in excruciating pain. Couldn't really stand up or anything. And so the paramedics came. I knew that was a cheat code. And I tell every man or anyone in the situation, if you really want to go to the hospital and be seen immediately, the cheat code is to call 911, because you're going to be taken right to the back as opposed to going to the front, processing, waiting in line, and all those things. So I knew not to do that. I've been in the field of being a first responder enough to know that. And so the paramedics came and they took me on a very, very long, slow ride because every bump was agitating my bladder. It was completely full, and made it to the hospital. And when I got there, they told me that, hey, we need to relieve you. And I said, well, how are we going to do that? I can't use it. They said, we got to put something called a catheter in you. I didn't even know what a catheter was, but I was definitely introduced to a catheter. And if you're okay with it, I have it actually right here. I kept my last catheter. I want to show this because I want to make it very... I want to make it...
That's a very this serious conversation, but
I want to make this very visual. This was inserted in my penis all the way to my bladder, all the way up into about the bag. So all of this is inserted with no Vaseline, right? And no numbness or anything, that they had to get that thing in there, and they did. And it was very painful. Most painful thing I had experienced. I had breaks and bruises and everything you can imagine. But that I went through that process. And the moment it reached my bladder, it was instant relief because the urine came out, about a gallon. And so I thought this would be over in 3 days. Went to see a doctor 3 days later. And he said, no, we're not taking it out. We'll take it out and let you try to pee. And we did. And I had to come right back because I still couldn't pee. He said, your prostate is 80 grams. Which is like the size of a small orange. And he said it should be the size of a walnut. And he said, I see that you've been seen before about a year when I came back into federal service, but you ignored the sign that the doc said, go get a biopsy. We think you might have prostate cancer, more so because I felt spooked and I felt like he had poor bedside manners. He just said, get a biopsy. You probably have cancer. I said, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to try to figure it out myself. And a year later, obviously, I find myself in the situation. But to the point of the medication, had I read it, which most of us don't do, it said do not consume if you have enlarged prostate or prostate issues. I didn't know that was me. And so it did what it was going to do. It told you right there. It's just the fact that I ignored it and I didn't read it.
So, I mean, there it is, right? So the catheter, some of us are familiar with the catheter for a variety of reasons. It is, again, it is an excruciating process, but I think that you were also relieved that a gallon was released from your body and it was a process that you moved through. Now, then you moved from that to go to, it was a Johns Hopkins. You have an experience there. Is that correct, Johns Hopkins?
Absolutely. But before Johns Hopkins, I actually saw about 4 or 5 different urologists
Right.
from the same team. And they all were doing different things, from sticking microscopes up there to sonograms up your rectum, everything leading up to the biopsy, which was the last thing I did. And when I did that, it actually came back saying positive for prostate cancer first. And I was a little spooked, but I said, okay, well, what do we do? And he said, still surgery. And I'm thinking, like, I'm not going to do surgery if you're telling me I have prostate cancer, unless you're talking about taking my prostate out. And so at that point, I started to feel, a little overwhelmed. And I started reaching out to other folks that I knew who had prostate cancer, been through different things. And they started mentioning things like, well, did you get imaging? Did you get an MRI? And I said, no, I haven't. They said, well, you should have done that first. And so then I was disappointed. I reached back to the doctors and expressed my disappointment. And that doctor who did the biopsy said, hey, I'm sorry, you weren't my patient. Had you been my patient, I would have done an MRI first. And so I'm thinking, like, well, who is this? Who am I working with? And so I completely walked away from them. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew I had this catheter in me at this point. It was for 5 months. And it was my 13th catheter at that point. And my wife said, hey, you tried to get in Johns Hopkins about a year ago when I first learned that I had an enlarged prostate. She said, why don't you try again? This well-renowned doctor, Dr. Arthur Burnett, black doctor who is number 5 in the world, number 1 in the country. I said, it's going to be impossible. She said, just pray and call. I called, and his assistant said, hey, you're already in our system. Can you come Monday? We got an appointment that's open. Went to see him, and when I tell you, I felt like it was just an aura that walked in the room. He made me feel so comfortable, and he was so confident. He said, this is nothing. I got you. I'll take care of you. We're going to do something called a TURP, which is a transurethral resection of the prostate. I said, well, I have prostate cancer. He said, don't worry about that. So I felt comfortable hearing them say, don't worry about it. And a month later, I went through this procedure, had that done. When I woke up, there was no pain. I just was looking through my chart, my chart, and I kept seeing the other clinic information, and I kept bypassing. I finally said, well, let me read this. And it was actually John Hopkins saying, hey, we don't agree with this. This isn't prostate cancer. This is high inflammation. It would have been detected had you done an MRI. And that was the moment I knew that this is a money thing, because surgeons only get paid when they perform surgery. And biopsy is a surgery. And I just started looking into it more and more. And I saw that my notes from my medical file was changed and all types of things. And I was, the law enforcement side of me was coming out now. I'm ready to file and press charges and try to do an investigation and all those things. And but something told me just, continue to march forward, spread the word, and not necessarily expose them, but spread this word with men and share with men how to ask questions, how to prepare yourself, what to do when you're going in, things you need to be, to be looking for, the signs and symptoms, the things that I ignored, that I want to just be completely, brutally transparent about, because I did completely. I thought that I was exempt from it. I thought maybe this is just part of the aging process. The urination is slowing down. The erections is not as firm as they need to be. And none of that was true.
So you have driven the bus all the way to BPH. So tell us about the benign prostatic hyperplasia.
Yeah, so there's three types of prostate issues, one being BPH, benign prostatic hyperplasia. The other was prostatitis, which is extreme pain a lot of folks have from just infections and things of that nature. And obviously the last one is prostate cancer. And so the BPH, you can have cancer with it, but more than likely most people don't that have BPH. It's just the prostate is doing what it's supposed to do, which is collecting, I like to say, a lot of dust. The gland is collecting everything that you're doing bad to your body. And so as it grows on the outside, it chokes and restricts on the inside. And so it did what it was supposed to do, which is choke my urethral line and stop me from being able to urinate. But it was also so massively big, it made me feel like I was constipated, but it sits right up against the rectum. And so that was stopping me from even being able to do number two, along with, the erections and things of that nature. So I had no clue that I was sitting on an 80-gram, prostate.
Right. So
that had to happen for years. The growth.
So, right. And so you talk about in your book about you give an understanding about how the purpose of the prostate and how it starts off at the small size P, then it grows and it tends to grow as we get older. But then you also mentioned, of course, prostatitis, the idea of the inflammation of the prostate, that's the itis, and also cancer. And you said that it's imperative that you advocate for yourself. I think all of that is critical in this conversation. I think that also when we talk about the issue of prostate, we have to recognize, which is why I was emphasizing the stress component early on, because testosterone is implicated in the process of stress as well, because it's part of the fight or flight mechanism, right? It's part of the energy process. And so that would contribute to that. But if we look at the experiences of people of African descent, and we begin to examine the dynamics of enslavement and what was violated the most for African people, not only the issue of the mind during enslavement, not only the body, but the idea of reproductive health, because the function of enslaved Africans not only was labor, but it was to reproduce labor again. So we see in Black women the occurrence of uterine, ovarian cancers, and also breast cancer. We see those cancers being there again associated with the reproductive area, and also we see this violation within Black men, a higher occurrence of such. And so we have to be clear about the process of understanding how do we understand what it is. And so I'm glad that you're able to share in your book the distinction between the cancer, the swelling process, inflammation, and the benign prostatic hyperplasia, right? That's important to note. And you say that it's important for us to advocate for ourselves. You give directives in the book as to what to do. You said don't accept the first response that you get. Give us those key points again. Will give us it the first time, right? I've read it. Y'all got to read the book. It has some good information. So I'm saying again because I read it. But let's run it back again, because you talk about the various types of treatment, the surveillance, the radiation, and so forth. But let's talk about what kind of questions should we be asking as men. What should we be looking out for? Go for it.
Yeah, first and foremost, don't rely strictly or solely on a blood test. The PSA test is not the only thing you need to do. And this, the one thing that most men are afraid to do is the digital rectal exam, which is that 3 to 5 second, hand going up the rectum. That is needed and necessary because they need to actually feel the prostate. That is what they're going to learn if you have a large prostate or not. They're also going to be able to see if there are any nodules just on the backside because they can't even feel the front side. So that's imperative that you do that. And so men need to get past that fear of experiencing that, number one, because it can save your life or it can change your life if you don't. Number two, learning about the prostate health. I mean, this is something that we need to learn more about, not wait until it happened, to be proactive and preventative. I got 2 sons and I'm teaching them about it right now, about different foods that you need to consume that's going to stop and slow down the rise of inflammation and things like that. Making sure that you understand if you are experiencing something with prostate cancer or anything, understand what a Gleason score, because they give you all this terminology and you're overwhelmed with, hey, you got a Gleason score number 6, or it's on the outer side of perimeter, this, that, whatever. They don't really tell you anything other than what they want to do, but they don't really help you. And so you have to do your own advocating. You have to do your own research. You have to talk to other people to learn about it. And so for me, I did stay quiet for maybe the first couple of weeks. And I was just going through the process and doing everything that they told me to do, which is get this test, get this test, get this test. And every time I got each test, I found that each doctor was still trying to push me to surgery. They weren't really talking about anything else, just surgery, and saying, hey, you have prostate cancer, without even knowing it was prostate cancer. And so I think that it's a gut punch, but you know what? You got to absorb that punch, stand back up, hopefully, prayerfully, if you have a partner or a companion or someone in the family that you can talk to, that can stand strong with you, and you get in the paint and start asking questions and learning about this thing, because it is something that is preventable, is treatable, and it's something that you can live with if you are diagnosed with it. And so for me, I'm very blessed and fortunate it turned out to be just BPH. And I'm not saying just as if it wasn't bad, because it was a terrible experience. I'm grateful that I had the perfect timing of meeting the right doctor at the right place at the right time, who was able to do a great surgery with success for me. But had I not experienced those things and going through everything that I did, which I said earlier, the gift that we have is not for ourselves, it's to be given away. And so now all these things that I've gone through, I want to go out here and just be a teacher, be a coach, be a servant leader, and help men, and even go to the doctor with men if they need me to ask those questions. As a matter of fact, there's a brother at my job who said, hey, I heard about your book. What do you think? Should I get the radiation treatment or should I go for this? I said, well, I don't want to make that decision, but I want to give you some information so you can sit down with your wife and you guys can discuss it. And he was so grateful. He chose one. He's doing well. And he's happy. And my only ask to him is, just like the Bible says, take this and go find other men that you can teach also.
So this is powerful. We're here with Coach Darelle Joiner. He's sharing with us from his book called The Prostate Playbook. He has given directives as to how we should advocate for our health, that we should be able to distinguish between those things that could actually be associated with prostate health. That is the inflammation of the prostate, prostatitis, the idea of BPH, benign prostatic hyperplasia, and also be aware of prostate cancer. How can we get in touch with you? How can we follow you? Where Instagram, Facebook? Where are you so we can
Absolutely
we can engage with you?
All my social handles is my name, Darelle Joiner, common spelling Darelle, last name Joiner, Joiner. I also have a website, which is themaddad.life, where I talk about other things over there, but you can also reach me there. My direct line is 301-332-4274. I'm available there as well.
Say it one more time for us.
The phone number is 301-332-4274. And I have also a email account, which is info@darellejoiner.com. info@darellejoiner.com.
So we have the information to be able to contact you. You all want to make sure that you invite him to a space to talk about men's health, talk about Black men's sexual health, reproductive health. This is a critical conversation to have. We don't want to take it lightly. It is one often that men are embarrassed to discuss. We must understand that when we talk about men's health, especially when we talk about Black men's health, there's so many factors that impact the health, healing, and holism of our bodies. Not only is there the dynamic of course, aging, the element of being a man, the idea of understanding these bodily organs that serve certain functions, neurochemicals are there, but it's exacerbated by the idea of generational of trauma that has not been addressed. And so Mr. Joiner shared with us not only the idea of the trauma of being in the foster care system, but compounded to that trauma is the issue of racism and oppression and being a Black man, compounded to the intergenerational discourse of what he has come through that is also a part of his body. We must recognize that this is also a part of our conversation, so we can't have a conversation just about the one phenomenon that is the prostate without understanding the historical legacy that we have to go through. He also told us that it's not only important to be able to talk right, but it's also important to live right. And so he said that there are 4 pillars that are very important: eat right, sleep right, stress less, and move more. Doesn't mean that nothing will happen to you. It just means that in the process, you are moving neurochemicals, you are making the body function, you're increasing the flow of blood throughout the body, and you're improving your cardiovascular system and your mental wellness. Helps you to think right, helps you to live right. And this is very important. We don't want to take any particular sign lightly. He mentioned that as well. When you see these things and feel these things, when you hear certain things, take them with some degree of seriousness and investigate about the health and health report. When your body starts giving you indications of certain things happening, take a look at it. No need to panic, but he says it's imperative to face it. Some people talk about fear, face everything and recover. So we want to thank you for being a part of Profound Conversations and having this conversation that we need to have more, that is about men's health, to understand that things happen and function the way they happen and function. And so the body does what it does to remind us or to indicate certain things to us that we need to do differently. And one of the things that happens for men is the idea you mentioned of the erection. The primary function of erection is for the process of transmitting fluid into the womb to be able to recreate life. And then the body says, if we're not right, there's no reason for us to actually have this erection right now. So it begins to reduce circulation to certain parts of the body, but it's only an indicator of something else that we have to look into. And that's what we also learned today. So a hint to the wise is sufficient. Listen, but more than important, not only just listen, take action. Thank you, brother Coach Darelle Joiner. And this is Profound Conversations.
Thank you for joining our Profound Conversation. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe to our podcast and then gift this information to a friend or family member using the share button. You can find our show on all social media platforms as well as on our website at profoundconvos.com.